Great. So once again, thanks for joining. This is the bidders webinar for EBCE's Ride Electric e-bike program solicitation. We will talk briefly about East Bay Community Energy. We will discuss the e-bike solicitation and the response requirements, as well as the scoring criteria and timeline. So briefly, about East Bay Community Energy, we are a joint power authority governed by 16 participating member agencies. We have about 650,000 active customer accounts, which is serving almost 2 million residents across Alameda County and the city of Tracy. And we have also added the city of Stockton, which will begin to take service in 2024. And both the cities of Stockton and Tracy are eligible locations for the e-bike solicitation that we are discussing today. We are the largest community choice aggregator in PG&E's territory, with about 6,400 gigawatt hours of annual load and a peak demand of 1,280 megawatts. As a community choice aggregator, we are a generator of electricity. So we buy electricity. We run that electricity through PG&E's distribution and transmission system. And then we bill customers for the core product that we provide, which is electricity service. That means that we have account level information about all of our accounts and customers. And we'll speak a little bit to that through the course of this presentation and as it relates to marketing outreach and customer verification on the e-bike program itself. And I'll pass to my colleague, Jesse Denver, who's going to cover the next few slides.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We really had a goal because, well, I'll take a step back. JP and I manage the transportation electrification program at EBCE, and we're going big on EV charging for light, medium, and heavy-duty goods movement vehicles. And we really wanted to help our joint power authority member communities achieve their transit first goals, which of course help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so we were able to get funding approved by our board of directors, which is made up of an elected official from each of our JPA member communities, to develop a micro-mobility program that really helps promote zero emission movement of people to reduce car vehicle trips, VMT, throughout our service territory. And as noted in the solicitation, the e-bike program has two components. As a potential respondent, you are not required to submit a proposal for both of the program areas, but for efficiency's sake, we do prefer to have a single program administrator. So please do take that into consideration. The first area of the program is an e-bike incentive program. And the incentive is really intended to, of course, increase adoption and ownership of e-bikes so that our residents have safe, affordable way to get around that is not associated with a car. And we do have a requirement that we've noted in the solicitation that 40% of the incentive budget will be dedicated to our low-income customers who are on what's known as a care electricity rate. And these customers are not, they do not solely live in disadvantaged or low-income census tracts, and we have all the information associated with where our care customers are. So please, just note that, which is also in the solicitation, that all of our care customers are located throughout our service territory and not just in a specific geographic boundary. And then the second area of the program is an e-bike lending program. And we really want to stimulate ownership by providing people with hands-on experiences with e-bikes to see if they could be a good fit for their daily lifestyle and needs, and be able to funnel folks into the incentive program if they decided that they want to go ahead and acquire a bike that is for them. It is not a requirement that participants in the lending program end up in the incentive pathway and are on, an ownership track. People can still just participate in the lending component of the program and consistently check out bikes if that's of interest to them. So just wanted to note that. But the goal here is that residents will be able to check out an e-bike and ultimately, help them just determine if this is a good fit for them or not, to continue checking out the bike or to go on and purchase a bike. The program is limited to residential customers and not businesses. We, for now, that is the intent, is really to help our residential population. There's a question in the chat about that. Help our residential population get access to this type of mobility option. Next slide, please. So as noted in the solicitation, we are allocating $6 million to this program. 4 million of that is for incentives, and the other $2 million is for the lending program component. And again, this is board approved budget from our board of directors. So this is internal EBCE money. And for context, the state of California's pending e-bike incentive program has a budget of $10 million. So EBCE, we are really going big in this space and, nearly matching what the state of California has dedicated for our service territory. So we're quite excited about the commitment we've made here to launching this program and having it have a pretty major impact, beneficial impact for our residents. The duration of the program will be a 3-year term, and the expected start date would be September 1st, 2023. Next slide, please. All right, so e-bikes, again, they need to be available to residents that are EBCE customers in Alameda County. We do not serve the city of Alameda. The city of Alameda has its own municipal utilities, so customers in that city would not be eligible. So please keep that in mind when, proposing how you're going to structure the incentives, what kind of bike shops you're working with, retailers you're working with. And we also need for the program to be available to customers in the cities of Tracy and Stockton in the Central Valley. And that is San Joaquin County, for those of you who may not be familiar with those cities. All participants are going to need to be an EBCE customer or live in a household, whether single family home or multifamily property that takes service from EBCE. And how we verify that is something that we'll work with the selected respondent on, through some sort of address verification and whatnot. The selected respondent or respondents will also be required to notify EBCE of customer participation in the program. And we do have the ability to, have you integrate into our Salesforce system so that we are able to connect participation to our electricity customer database. And that is something that we will also work with you on. That's not some separate configuration that you'll need to set up. Incentives will only be available for new e-bike purchases. So please do keep that in mind when you are thinking through how you're going to source product. We are not looking for used product. And incentive must be at point of sale. And so that means that you will need to establish a relationship with a bike retailer who customers will go to a particular bike retailer location, either within the service territory, one of our cities, multiple cities, and or with an online retailer. So you can bring both to the program. We're really looking to you to pull together a proposal that is quite comprehensive, but note that individual incentive checks will not be cut to individual program participants for bike incentive. This is something that will happen where the retailer will get the check for the incentives that have been given out via that point of sale purchase.
I would say that the most important thing that we're looking for is that a customer doesn't have to come up with the cash. So if there's another mechanism other than point of sale where that could be brought to bear, that's the end goal, is especially for our low income customers and populations, we are not looking for people to front the incentive at the point of purchase.
Income qualified customers, again, that's defined by their care status, i.e. are they on a care electricity rate? And that's something that EBCE will be able to verify with the selected respondent in whatever mechanism you set up for that point of sale incentive, so that they get a different incentive amount. And again, they'll receive 40% of all the incentive program funding. So we're really looking to have a big impact, beneficial impact for our low income care customers. E-bikes have to have operable pedals with a motor that is less or equal to 750 watts. Conversion kits, scooters, mopeds, none of that, they are not eligible. This is an e-bike program. E-bikes provided via local and or kind of online retailers, again, that is allowed. So we're leaving that to you, the respondents, to develop what your channel will look like, and for you to really think comprehensively about our service territory is quite large. So ensuring that there are enough resources that somebody who lives in Stockton doesn't have to drive all the way to Oakland to get a bike, for example. That is not something that we would look favorably upon. E-bike deployment under both program areas, the incentive and the lending program, again, must begin no later than September 1st of 2023. And we've thought quite a bit about this, but this will be limited to participants who are 18 years or older. People who are under 18 will not be eligible to participate. Again, as I noted earlier, disadvantaged and low-income census tracts have very particular geographic boundaries. However, that is not indicative of low-income customers, primarily and only living in those geographic boundaries. We have low-income customers throughout our entire service territory that are outside of those geographic boundaries. So please do take that into consideration in scoping the design that you are proposing to EBCE for the program. And again, we know the address of all low-income customers in our service territory, and we'll be able to confirm that eligibility with the selected respondent through our Salesforce CRM tool, because again, these customers are on our care electricity rate. And we will work with the selected respondent to develop and execute an outreach campaign in multiple languages, again, for both the lending and the incentive program. And we also, of course, have our internal communication channels to be able to reach customers through their emails and addresses and whatnot. And so we would work with you on the messaging for those outreach campaigns, and we would leverage our channels to be able to get the word out about program availability. And we're looking to you all to propose additional channels for how we might get the word out to eligible participants. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to hand it back over to JP to talk about the scoring criteria.
Thanks, Jesse. So the scoring criteria follows the structure of the solicitation, and we've asked for extensive detail on these programmatic design and eligibility elements. But in brief, we're going to be making sure that the solicitations meet our minimum eligibility requirements, and that we have confidence in the program plan and the release plan of any selected vendor. We want to make sure that the selected vendor or vendors have experience delivering similar programs, either in the e-bike space or other micromobility or associated area. And so the qualification and experience will be quite important as these types of programs are ramping up across region and across the state. The budget is an important element. We're looking for proposals on, incentive levels at, what is the right incentive level to spur the uptake that we are looking to incentivize in our income qualified and non-income qualified pools. And we're looking for proposals that may kind of promote a market transformation in this space, so potentially declining incentives over time. There's potential for other funding that could be leveraged that we'd be interested in proposals and respondents coming back to us with. We recognize that there are additional costs to administering these programs that can be quite sizable on both the incentive program and the lending program. We want to make sure that those cover the necessary costs of running these programs. So the budget will be an important element of our evaluation. From the marketing and outreach perspective, it is very important for us to widely engage with our customers and reach and communicate to our customers in language, meeting customers where they are. There are certainly customers who are aware of e-bikes and micromobility options, and many who are not. So there's going to be a level of education as we try to engage across a wide set of our customers. And this is a 3-year program. We're investing not only money, but considerable kind of time and duration. And so we expect to be kind of raising the awareness about these types of clean transportation solutions. So the marketing outreach is key. This is something that EBCE has been building our capacity and capability to do through multiple programs. We are currently running a induction cooktop lending program right now, which is similar, at least in goals, to the e-bike lending program. And we run many programs where we are facilitating targeted customer outreach through our customer relationship management tool. So we will be working with the selected vendor or vendors to put those campaigns together and then build tools to verify customers so that we can reach the targeted populations, as well as create a fairly smooth process for registering customer interest and moving customers through a program milestone system. And then the program implementation plan is really constructed of both the program design, as well as the procurement strategy. We are in a time of supply chain constraints, and we recognize that getting and procuring sufficient inventory and building relationships with vendors takes time, and we want to understand what your approach to those activities will be, as well as the fact that we will have confidence that we can launch the program at the appointed time, and we want to be measuring kind of customer satisfaction through that journey. And then lastly, we have attached a master services agreement, which is our consulting agreement with EBCE. And we want to see any kind of red lines or proposed modifications that come back with that. And we'll be evaluating the extent of those potential red lines in the course of our program solicitation evaluation. So those are the main scoring criteria that we will be using to vet and score proposals. Lastly, we issued this a bit ago, as you are all aware. We had to postpone the webinar. And so because of that, we have revised the final deadline to submit questions in recognition that this webinar is happening a little bit later. But we kind of move forward or shortened the time frame for us to respond to those questions in order to keep the solicitation process moving and on the original time frame. So we will be still requesting that responses are due on the 6th of January, with a goal of negotiating responses and getting to an agreed upon scope of work and a board approval of our vendor or vendors in the February timeframe. And so that's the timeline. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that come through the Q&A chat.
And I do see a few that have come through that we've answered in real time, but one that Linda answered is a good one for us to touch on, which is, do you envision the EBCE incentive to stack with other incentive like CARB's e-bike incentive or other local regional e-bike incentives? And the answer is that is not required. And that's simply because while that is beneficial and of course would help make our dollars go further, it is a total unknown at this time whether CARB's e-bike incentive program will be oversubscribed by the time our program launches. It's totally unknown if there are other programs coming online in between when our program launches and now from other regional entities, or even after ours. So we really are hoping that respondents structure the incentives based on the available budget that we have outlined in the solicitation, and that you really describe how you would make those go as far as possible within our current budget limitations, and not kind of rely on other external incentives that are unknown. And then I think JP answered Amanda's question around the administration costs when he was reviewing that particular slide around the scoring criteria. But please do review the solicitation, because we do have a very clear kind of amount that we are not willing to exceed for admin costs.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Just so that other folks are aware, there are questions that have been answered. Another one was if we are open to additional funds being available to care customers, and we are open to discussion on that. As you know, the 40% is a minimum qualification amount for qualifying bids. Linda asked how many care customers we have. We have about 120,000 accounts on care. There's generally 3 to 4 people who live in each household. So that's more like 500,000 residents who are, in the care, living care households. Not quite that many when you factor for the over 18 age eligibility requirement that we specified in the solicitation. And if submitters only want to respond to one of the program elements and we have multiple submissions that are only for one part of the program, then yeah, we would look to connect up the lending program and incentive program submitters so that we would be able to ensure a smooth transition between those two programs. Again, we prefer to have a single program implementer, but that's not a requirement of the submission.
We have a new question that is, if we can, meaning the respondent, provide sufficient rationale for doing so, would you consider proposals that suggest shifting some of the budget from the lending program to the incentive program? That is, will you confirm that such a proposal will not immediately be disqualified? I mean, I'll take a shot at answering that. What the budget amounts that we've outlined have been well thought out in what we want to do initially. And if the lending program as initially scoped is successful, there's always room for EBCE potentially adding budget to expand the lending program. But we do want to keep the budget amounts that have been allocated to the two programs pretty firm.
Yeah, I think we want to see conforming bids. If there's a conforming bid and there's a justification or a proposal for some kind of adjustment, then I think that's something that we could evaluate, but we want to make sure that we have a set of conforming bids associated with those budget allocations so that we can compare them to each other.
And there's a question around if we'll circulate these live Q&A. Yes, those will get posted to the solicitation webpage.
As well as the recording of this webinar.
Please feel free. We have plenty of time to ask additional questions. This is a great way to get clarity from us. So please let us know your thoughts.
We'll leave this open for another couple of minutes. And if there's no questions, then we'll provide a warning and then close down the webinar if there's no additional questions.
Emily has asked a question. Is it possible to API into EBCE Salesforce system for automatic customer qualification?
I'll answer that. It's something that can be discussed. We have built already multiple customer verification tools through web forms. We would expect a web form for program interest to be hosted on our site, which we had stated in the solicitation. And so that's a very easy way for a customer to input really just their name and address, and that provides an immediate verification and qualification. An API is something that can be discussed if there are greater volumes of customers.
All right. Is there a minimum number of e-bike lending locations in your service territory? I mean, I would say we're really looking to you to propose to us what that minimum should be given our service territory geographic boundary. For example, if you don't think we can establish a lending program that reaches Stockton, Tracy, the Tri-Valley, the Inner East Bay, and the South Bay region of our service territory, meaning Fremont, then, tell us why you don't think that that is feasible with the available budget, and how you might propose then to structure a program that happens in phases if there's subsequent funding. Or you do think that you can make it happen, and you're gonna say, we think these 8 core locations would be great, and we're gonna go and secure, sites where bikes can be checked out, and here's our proposal for how the bikes are gonna be stored and recharged, and here's the staff that's gonna be available to help participants check the bikes in and out. Like, we're looking for those details from you.
So Christopher, you've asked how will you be sharing participant info? Can that be done soon? I think are you requesting about webinar participants or submission participants? Maybe you can answer that as we answer some of these other questions. The webinar participants. Yeah, I think we can post the webinar participants online. Have we done that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, another question here. Is it a first time EBCE has launched an e-bike program? Yeah, this is our first, like almost everyone else out there, this is the first e-bike program that we've launched. And we're really excited to have a supportive board of directors who's given us significant amount of funding to do this. And so we hope that, this initial tranche of our e-bike program will grow, and they will continue to be supportive and give us additional budget in the future to expand upon this initial launch of what is EBCE's first entry into e-bike efforts.
Yeah. Christopher asked if we're keeping the deadline the same. So we are keeping the deadline the same. We realized we moved this out because of the push from the last webinar. We are going to keep the EBCE posting of any responses to questions to the same date as originally posted. And so the submission is still going to be January 6th. And then as far as offering lending or incentives to Stockton residents until 2024, I think we'll actually be able to offer and we'll be able to do customer verification by the September timeframe that we have specified for launching this program. And we are certainly open to providing incentives or lending to Stockton before January of 24. And so we plan to launch in Stockton at the same time that we launch the rest of the program. All right, that was a flood of questions. Hopefully we answered those. If there's any more, we're happy to answer them. Linda, we're submitting to be the administrator for both components. Do you expect one budget or one for each? Yeah, we expect one budget for each to be submitted, even if it's a single vendor submitting across both programs. All right. I will leave this open for a couple more minutes, and then we will close it down if we don't see any more questions.
how will you measure success? That question just came in. I think on the incentive program, obviously it, participants and how many low-income care customers within the budget that we've allocated for that segment of our residential population have participated, and how much of the budget we've been able to spend to be able to get bikes out the door for those residents. And then, we're also looking to maximize participation by all of our customers. And so we'd like to see, e-bikes kind of flying out the door and for us to be able to report back to the board, wow, this was so popular and we had so much uptake that we're coming back to you for a request for additional budget. And I mean, it'll be really interesting to see like geographic distribution of uptake. And so that's something to think about, is ensuring that, education and outreach is happening throughout our service territory to really try to get participation from all areas of our service territory, and not just Oakland, for example, or Berkeley. We really want to see pretty distributed participation throughout our service territory.
Yeah, I think to add to that, we will be measuring kind of customer satisfaction with both the process and e-bikes as well. So part of the rationale for having enrollment and verification, as well as all of the kind of major milestones in our CRM, is that we can do pre and post incentive or lending session surveys to understand what customers think about e-bikes before they use them and after, as well as how smooth that journey has been through whichever program they're going through. And so success will also be measured on customers' perception of e-bikes, as well as the perception of the process. Albert asks if incentives should be in a dollar amount or percentage. I think it could be in either. I think our expectation is that it would be in dollar increments as opposed to some percentage amount, which would also get potentially complicated. That said, we would certainly expect to have a cap that the incentive amount would never exceed the total amount of the purchase of the e-bike.
So the next question that was submitted there around, is the lending program free, or is there some sort of cost to users to check out an e-bike through the lending program? I think the intent was that it was no cost to customers, but I think that we're really, again, looking to respondents to design a program and propose it to EBCE for our consideration. And what we resonate most with, will score accordingly. And then we would work with the selected respondent on the specific details of how that gets rolled out and launched to our customers.
Yeah, I think one element to that will be, if there is some kind of a deposit, or what are the mechanisms that are used to ensure a timely return, since these are potentially, valuable units, and how we can make sure to, not have that be an impairment to participation, certainly by our low-income customers.
Are incentives limited to one household or more than one adult from a family? This is a great question because nobody wants to ride their bike alone. So I would say that we're probably not going to limit it to one adult per household, but that is something for us to think about. And again, we'd be looking to the respondent to really propose to us how we might structure some of those program parameters and requirements. Adam asked, has EBCE discussed any ideas about restricting incentive limits to prevent funds from incentivizing a category of e-bikes that he would describe as e-waste, i.e. no name, extremely cheap bikes that are not serviceable or built to last? Adam, as a respondent, we are looking to your firm to source the bikes. So you would be procuring the bikes and working with bike OEMs and bike shops to make sure that those bikes don't end up in our program. And we're looking to respondents to really secure that supply chain and equipment and to provide our customers with the best experience with a bike possible. So that there are no bikes the way you described in our program.
Yeah, and I would just add to that that longevity of bikes and is certainly one of the things that we've asked about in the program description is how do we make sure that these bikes are going to continue to be used and useful. So that's something that we are considering as we will be evaluating these proposals.
Support as close to free.
That's for the lending program.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, every time I say that we need a couple questions and we're going to shut it down, we get more questions. So questions are good. Yeah, keep them coming. But we will close this down at 3 o'clock. So 6 minutes is the time we have left in this. So please, if you do have any questions, submit them so we make sure we have time to answer them all. They're, I think, extremely helpful to discuss and will be helpful to post for everybody to have access to at the end of the webinar. All right, a couple more minutes now.
Anything else?
That's the last. No. All right. If there's no more questions, then I think we will be wrapping this up, and we will be posting the webinar to the solicitations page, which is there with the solicitation and all the materials. And we will also be posting the Q&A from the webinar. And again, we ask that you